What's up, everybody? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick, and I have yet another album review for you. So this week was maybe like a little slim pickings as far as like major releases. Of course, we had In Flames, and we did something a little bit more underground with Oak. So I was kind of rooting around, seeing what else there was to review that was possibly something that would be interesting to go over this week. And I found one. It might be a little bit outside of my usual wheelhouse, but it's something to talk about. So we're going to go over the latest offering from Distant with their new album Heritage. This also comes out on the 10th of February on Century Media Records. This is actually a jump up from their first two albums, which were out on Unique Leader Records. This band formed in 2014 in the Netherlands, and this is deathcore slash down tempo. Now, deathcore, generally, I'm kind of hit or miss on that. Like, there's some deathcore I do enjoy, and then there's kind of the majority of it that I don't. But every now and then, checking out some deathcore, I kind of wonder if maybe something will capture my interest. I was big into it in like the late 2000s, I believe, and it was pretty cool for a minute, and then it kind of died rather suddenly for me, and I was definitely just moving on past that. So I jammed a couple of singles by this band initially, and I was like, well, this is going to be maybe a bit of a challenge, but I decided to see it through and listen to this entire album, and it's a relatively long album for a deathcore album. Like, generally I think deathcore is kind of best when it's like more condensed, and this album is over 47 minutes long, and it just feels a little bit long for what they're going for, because this is just primal chugging. That down-tempo aspect keeps it very groovy, very syncopated. Of course, there's a fuck ton of breakdowns because it's fucking deathcore, and pretty much this band will, do the down-tempo thing, which if you like that breakdown we just played, don't worry, we're gonna fucking slow it the fuck down and make it that much heavier. They go to that fucking well in particular so much, I think they just fucking fell in and drowned. Like songs like The Grief Manifest, Born of Blood, God, what other ones here? The Gnostic Uprising, Argent Justice, Orphan of Blight. I'm pretty much just gonna say every fucking track in here because I think they all have them. But the thing on here that kind of like really drives me nuts is, holy shit, these guys are in love with atmosphere. And I like atmosphere in albums, but holy shit, the atmosphere almost takes over this album. While the music is very primal, chuggy, kind of just straight for the fucking throat all the time, the atmosphere is essentially a orchestra of like 18 laptops playing samples from everything from like dubstep to symphonic fucking bits to just industrial loops, and it is blaring almost at all times, and holy shit, it kind of just drowns out everything at certain points. Well, maybe minus the vocals, because those are really fucking up front. The production here is it's so over fucking produced. Like, this doesn't even sound natural anymore. Like, this doesn't even sound like human beings were involved with this. This sounds like it was written by an algorithm. I'm probably reciting stuff that I said about Lorna Shore, probably because I would say this band is relatively comparable. That, and well, Will Ramos shows up in the title track to add his, vicious vocals. But yeah, the comparisons don't end there with Lorna Shore, just in terms of like songwriting, all the atmosphere, and of course, just bloated, huge production that is just too big for its own fucking sake, like to the point where things are overlapping. There are some decent solos on here occasionally, and they are completely washed out by whatever synthy effect they choose at the fucking moment. It wasn't until the fifth track on here, Exo Filth, where the synths dropped out for a minute, and I actually started to hear the guitars a little bit more clearly. And the guitar tone here is beefy, down-tuned, it's ugly, it's pretty much built to chug, but for the most part, it kind of just sits in the background because, I don't know, like whatever the fuck they're playing in terms of like ambience is just taking over at all points. I also noticed that a little bit on Gnostic Uprising and A Sentence to Suffer, where the synths would actually drop out, or whatever the effects are, whatever the hell you want to call them. They're a fucking constant din of fucking bullshit at a certain point where I was just fucking annoyed with them. But when they dropped out, being able to hear the riffs and these more primal fucking riffs, it was actually kind of enjoyable. Like, the Gnostic Uprising has some really badass riffs. There's some fucking cool hardcore riffs that show up on there up until the fucking synths come in like a fucking tsunami and just wipe out fucking everything. Again, I like atmosphere, but atmosphere can't overtake the music itself. And this album is just so fucking busy with shit But when you strip back all of the polish and, extra special effects, what you have is maybe a little just kind of generic, heavy, and it does have its moments where it's, pretty decent, but for the most part, like, this is just kind of built to chug and built to groove. A lot of this just kind of hangs on to like syncopated grooves, guitars follow suit, vocals that alternate between high and lows. It's a lot of stuff that you've heard before, but I think the thing that maybe they're counting on to make it sound a little bit more fresh and a little bit more interesting is all of the extra clatter that is going on in the fucking background. Now, I know there's like a school of thought where like stuff like this makes the song bigger, more grand, almost more cinematic, and I guess to a degree it is cinematic, but this is cinematic like a Michael Bay movie where these songs are just a series of explosions, and when you strip it back, there's really no story or really like construction outside of like a lot of bare bones primal songwriting. Or it's just stuff that you might have heard before from other bands, again, like Lorna Shore or Brand of Sacrifice, just, with a glossier coat of paint, maybe. I don't know, like, this is like saying Avatar's like a fresh original idea, but when you break it down, it's just fucking Dances with Wolves with just a bigger fucking special effects budget. There are sections where some of the ambience does work. The last track, Plague Reader, I think gives the album some time to breathe, at least in terms of the song. Like, there are some more open sections, some cool clean melodies. I do like how it fades in. And of course it goes into the inevitable breakdown and pretty much everything you heard in the album, but I like how it's done here. It's a little bit more spaced out. You have, some moments to actually reflect on some different soundscapes in there and some actual clean guitars. There's actually some really cool guitar parts in there too, and like cool guitar parts on here kind of pop up intermittently. Like, again, most of this is just straightforward chugging. I mean, that's kind of to be expected from down-tempo and deathcore, like that is sort of the backbone of the genre. But for example, the title track actually squeezes in like, some more blackened riffs. There's a straightforward death metal like sort of section on there where it's a blast beat and a more death metal centric riff versus just like, deathcore chugging. It's nice to hear those moments, but a lot of it kind of comes down to song construction here. And honestly, these songs just don't flow very well. Like, it is just one breakdown after the other with a variety of effects on top of that and some admittedly really good vocals, but musically it's kind of just rinse and repeat a lot. Songs like Paradigm Shift and The Grief Manifest, kind of just go on. Like, it's just one syncopated chug after the other with a variety of effects and some admittedly pretty solid vocals, but there doesn't feel like there's a real flow. Like, there's no real like structure of the songs. Like, there's some cool riffs here and there, but for the most part, it's just kind of on to the next part, and the transitions are just, kind of there. Like, there's nothing really flashy about them. And most of them do end in, of course, a giant slow breakdown, because this is deathcore. That's what we expect, and that's what you'll get. But I think the main offenders for me were Human Scum and Argent Justice. Human Scum, I swear, whoever was doing all these samples and such and all the ambience in the background has ADHD, and they just could not decide on a setting, so they just went with fucking all of them. It was like a cat walked across the fucking laptop and was like, you know what, that works. And honestly, it doesn't. It's just lots of noises. There's like some dubstep, almost like industrial moments in there that are just fucking shoehorned in there and feel so out of place. And the song is just kind of just, I don't know, going nowhere. Like, it really doesn't like flow very well. But Argent Justice is probably the biggest offender of these main offenders here, because it's 7 minutes long and it is absolutely bloated with guest stars. I didn't even write down all of them, but there were, I want to say like 7 guest stars, and I'm just going by what Spotify said, but they didn't have the members listed, but I assume it were the vocalists. We have, Suicide Silence, so I assume that's Eddie. Emir, so I assume that's Frankie. That's not great to advertise you have him on your album. And then members of Angel Maker and Body Snatcher, which when I read those names, I was like, man, were those like fucking like villains or fucking anti-heroes in Image Comics during the 90s? Because that sounds very like 90s fucking edgy comic character. And now I'm not familiar with those bands, so I'm really not, knocking them. I'm just saying the names sound a little weird. But yeah, this one song has probably more guests on it than the first 2 Soulfly albums. And it is just a fucking mess. Like, nothing really comes together. People are shouting from different ends of the fucking room, it sounds like. I don't know. It's just so all over the place and not really well constructed at all. Like, this is 7 minutes of just breakdowns and nothing really memorable. It's bloated, it's drenched in effects. There's like some kind of like hardcore-ish rapping in there. It's just kind of a 7-minute clusterfuck, honestly. My favorite part of it was probably the end of it, where it actually dropped out everything except for like a, kind of dissonant, creepy guitar line. Like, that was it. And just to hear something isolated without like 1,000 things going on at once was actually kind of refreshing. But that's like literally the last 10 seconds of the song. So I imagine you can probably sense where this review is going. I wasn't a big fan of this. And there's part of me that thinks I might have just aged out of this particular style of deathcore, or possibly deathcore in general. I don't know. It feels kind of weird because I was a big fan at one point, and now this just sounds kind of messy and primal to me. At least this one does. Yeah, I really wasn't a fan of this, and overall I'm going to give it 2 stars. There are some moments in here where I think it sounds really good, and it's when the fucking atmosphere fucking drops the fuck out for just a little bit and lets the guitars breathe, because there are some solid riffs in here. It's fucking brutally heavy. Like, there's no fucking skimping on that. But this feels like, a Michael Bay film where it's all bluster, it's all fucking flashy and just, crazy shit and fucking shit exploding, and, a script written by a fucking 12-year-old that has just seen his first boob. It's probably better that I can't understand the lyrics in here, because then it'd be probably one more thing I could bitch about. But underneath all of this, I think there's some decent moments on here. It's just too bloated. Like, there's too much going on, and it feels unnecessary. I don't really know like what all this adds to the music at all, other than just layers of noise that sort of buries other aspects of the music that I think are much stronger. Like, there's occasionally some really decent leads, but good luck fucking hearing them. There's some cool riffs too, but of course, there has to be some sort of weird keyboard effect or sound loop or electronic drum loop or what the fuck ever going on to fucking further bury it. This is like getting a decent steak and then having someone dump A1 sauce all the fuck over it and say, there, it's seasoned now, so it's better. Is it? There's just too much going on for what it is, and it's too long for what it is. Yeah, I really wish I had more positive things to say about it, but I think underneath this stuff, there is some solid music, and again, this might not be for me in general, but I wanted to give it a chance. So if you were like a big fan of Lorna Shore or Brand of Sacrifice, or maybe like Chelsea Grin or something like that, definitely check this band out, give them a shot. You might really dig it. It just really wasn't my thing. But hey, I gave it a shot, and I gave it a shot. I think that's about all I'm going to say there. So if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there's a link down below to thrallsmetal.com. Our store is there. We do need to restock on shirts, but our Patreon link is also there if you'd like to help us out there. And of course, Denver Death Fest will be going on April 20th through April 22nd. I think by Tuesday we should have a lineup announcement. It was pretty much delayed for, I think we had a change in lineup, so we had to like discuss moving around bands and such. I don't know. I'm, again, not that involved in it. I'm mostly doing the day-to-day stuff. But I assure you there will be more announcements coming up, because we have a lot of national acts to announce. Anyway, link down below for tickets if you would like to actually go. Come out and say hi to us, hang out, have some beers, watch some death metal bands. It'll be a good fucking time. And of course, thank you all so much for liking, subscribing, following, all that shit. It means the world to us. It's awesome to see this channel grow. I try to think of something different to say every time I do this, but I fail at that like every time, because I don't know, I'm just fucking thankful and shit. It's a pretty cool feeling. But yeah, we have a lot of stuff coming up. Again, I'm working on settling a date for the Crowbar ranking, and I got States of Metal. I'm gonna do another one of those here relatively soon. And some other fun stuff we got planned as well, so definitely stay tuned. And of course, thank you all once again, and we will catch you later.